What's up, Internet? Welcome to Once Over. I'm Kaylee, and today we are going to be giving the Once Over to Anora, and also to Yuri Borisov. Yeah, there will be spoilers.
Give it a good once-over.
Giving us the once-over.
Giving him the once-over.
Give me a once-over.
Down to give us the once-over.
For a routine once-over.
Once-over.
Oh, just once over lightly.
So today we are going to be talking about the movie Anora, which came out in 2024 and has been getting tons and tons of buzz. But moreover, we are going to talk about my new favorite actor, Yuri Borisov, who plays the character Igor in Anora. Let me just start out by saying that the fact that this movie is called Anora and not Igor is extremely telling. I could definitely make an argument that this movie should have been called Igor and not Anora, but we can talk about why that is after we get a little bit into the movie itself. If you've seen this one, do you think it would have benefited from being called Igor as opposed to Anora? I don't know. Anyways, this movie was written, directed, and edited by Sean Baker, who previously directed the absolutely amazing The Florida Project, Tangerine, and Red Rocket, all of which are incredible and have proven him to be an expert at character studies when it comes to filmmaking. And honestly, Anora fits the mold perfectly. For a long time, I have said that The Florida Project is my favorite of Baker's films, but I'm going to be honest, I'm pretty sure that Anora has taken over that top spot because this movie is amazing. At its core, this movie is a brutal class commentary which develops a picture and contrast between two very different lifestyles. The first third of the film introduces us to Annie.
It says Anora.
I know, but I go by Annie.
Who is an exotic dancer, and she seems very happy, very unashamed, and very comfortable with her job.
Is that a butterfly?
Yeah, it's a butterfly.
You're so classy.
She feels unnaturally real in her role, so much so that I, knowing Baker's tendency to cast actors who have some experience, actually believed that she was a real exotic dancer and that he probably picked her up in a strip club. There's a scene where she strips for another character in his home, and it feels unbelievably authentic. She is headstrong for sure.
I'm not a fucking prostitute, you fucking piece of shit.
That fucking Armenian piece of shit.
You Armenian piece of shit.
But she is also a responsible stripper. She does things like use condoms when she is having sex with clients. I guess that doesn't make her sound very responsible, but I think that you know what I mean there. She's go condoms. Yeah, use those. It's great. And she doesn't really seem to be that into drinking. There's a couple of times in the movie where people offer her a drink and she just has water. I think that like the most torrid stuff that she does is she might have a little bit of the green and then she might do a little gummy of some other stuff. But other than that, we don't really see her abusing drugs or alcohol, despite the fact that the stereotype is that many strippers do. Because Sean Baker understands his characters so well, he casts them with much thought. And Mikey Madison, as Anora is no exception to that. He saw Madison's work in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and fell in love with her performance so much that he actually went back to the theater to see the movie again so that he could watch her scenes. Later in 2022, when Scream came out, he was so impressed again by her that he said, I need her for Anora. She is Anora. Annie meets a rich, childish, sexually charged Russian named Ivan or Vanya, played by Mark Eydelshteyn. In the beginning of the film, it's actually a little bit hard to tell if Vanya is actually a 5-year-old or if it's just the language barrier that makes him act a little bit goofy.
I'm a really big drug dealer.
Oh, really?
Why you trust me? No, but I'm a really big gun dealer.
Oh, and the constant smoking of the green thing. One of his most defining characteristics is that he is overexcited about everything, every single thing. Basically, all that we know about him is that he lives in a giant, beautiful mansion, and that the reason for that is because of family money. I was almost as enchanted by his mansion as I was his character. And really, the house is a character in and of itself. When Sean Baker was location scouting, he wanted to find the most expensive mansion in Brooklyn, and he did that. So the actual mansion featured in this film was sold in 2021 for something like $7.2 million. It has 5 bedrooms, 4.5 bathrooms, all across 14,000 square feet, which is mind-bogglingly huge, as well as indoor parking for 6 cars, a beautiful, beautiful swimming pool and spa that I believe is around 1,000 square feet in and of itself, as well as many other fancy features.
Dinner is served.
Various things.
How'd you know our favorite foods?
I analyzed your leavings.
Similar to how Baker casts characters, he needed to cast this house because it plays such an important role in the film. This is not only the setting where the characters interact, but also almost a breathing being that is giving life to the story. During filming, the film's location manager, Ross Brodar, actually lived in the mansion, and he did something not so great, or one of the assistants did something not so great. So it turns out that the current owners of this mansion are in fact Jewish, and they keep kosher. Now, there are lots of rules about keeping kosher, one of which is that your house has to be clean. Clean is a complicated term in Judaism. What it means in this context is that if something becomes contaminated with food that is not kosher, there is a traditional ceremony which you must do in order to clean it. I'm a really bad Jew. I don't know how to describe this. Anyway, one of the assistants who was working on the film ended up cooking a pork chop in the kitchen there using an Hermes plate. So very, very fancy stuff. And because that was not kosher, it either needed to be discarded or cleaned. So they decided to do the cleaning ritual. Now, the cleaning ritual requires you to bury something in the ground, I believe, for 7 days. So that Hermes plate was just buried in the ground for a little while. When I was a kid, one of my friends' families, they kept kosher. They accidentally cooked meat on their dairy stove, which meant that they had to bury the stove in the ground. But it was even worse than that, actually, because they had to take every single piece apart. You have to remove all of the aspects. So, this location manager who is in this giant mansion when filming Anora, just one plate, you can't break that apart. A stove and oven you can break apart into a million teeny tiny screws. So they did that. They broke it into a million tiny pieces. They buried each one individually in the backyard. They waited however long it is you're supposed to wait. It might be more than 7 days now that I'm thinking about it, but whatever. And when they were finally able to dig it back up, they could not find all of the parts, so they had to buy a new oven anyway. There are some weird rituals in Judaism.
Who brings the sheet to a hotel? And what's it? There's a hole there.
Yeah. Because you're Hasidic.
What, do you believe that stupid shit?
But that's not why we're here, is it? We want to talk about Anora. Duh. The first 40 minutes of this film is basically just partying. These kids have all the money in the world, so they do things like have a huge, gigantic New Year's Eve party. They go to Vegas, rich kid style.
But do it with a double dose, because we're gonna go even harder tonight.
And usually, in fact, probably always, when there are long periods of time, like 40 minutes of this sort of stuff happening, I get a little bit bored in the movies, and I find myself reaching for my phone to play games or surf the web. You gotta put them onto different branches and match them up, but sometimes you run out of branches and then you're screwed, so then you gotta get another branch. I know, it's really annoying. But I am so enchanted by everything that Sean Baker does that I didn't even think about it for this movie. I never want to take my eyes off the screen. I want to know what's going to happen. I feel tension even though almost nothing is happening. He's truly incredible. Also, during this time, we get to see Annie starting to fall for Vanya. As their intimate relationship blossoms, she finally starts to tell him, hey, maybe slow down a little bit. We might enjoy ourselves a little bit more if this was not so erratic. That's an extremely intimate moment for her because, of course, the way that she met Vanya is through her career as an exotic dancer. So her attachment to him is theoretically just money, transactional. This is when we can really start to see her starting to like him as a person and to want their relationship to go to the next level. But it ends up that he is just a spineless child who has benefited from his parents' wealth and become spoiled rotten. Ultimately, Vanya proposes to Annie and she leaves her job to become a wifey. But of course, for him, it's more of a green card marriage. They sort of seem like they're in love. And she's definitely living out her Cinderella fantasy. Although the honeymoon phase does end a little bit quickly when he becomes more interested in video games than her, which I guess is pretty standard practice these days. I don't always sort birds. Sometimes I sort cakes also. You just put the cake on the little thing and then it like switches the plates and then... At this point, her life revolves entirely around him. We never get to see any of her interests in this film. For example, she doesn't have the equivalent of video games. She's not often doing something that she thinks is fun. When the news of the wedding and respective shame because of Annie's profession spreads to Russia, Vanya's mother is horrified and she orders his Armenian godfather Toros to find the couple and arrange for an annulment because we cannot have this happening. No hookers for you, Vanya. So Toros sends Garnik and Igor to the house to deal with their whore problem.
I'm not a fucking prostitute!
And they arrive when Vanya is at full attention, which is probably not a clip I can put into this YouTube video, but I think you get the idea.
It's his penis.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
And now we can finally begin talking about Igor.
I'm Igor.
Yay! Yuri Borisov is my new favorite actor, and he is actually getting the recognition that he deserves, which I am so happy about. When I was watching this movie and I was falling in love with him as an actor, I actually didn't know about all of the incredible nominations that he's received, so I was so happy to find that out after the fact. He is nominated as Best Supporting Actor at the Golden Globes, Critics' Choice, SAG Awards, BAFTAs, and the Academy Awards. And holy crap, does he deserve it. Within minutes of seeing him on screen, I couldn't take my eyes off of him. Every micro movement that he makes, every under his breath sort of chuckle, he embodies the character of Igor, who is a hired goon that has a ton of emotions just below the surface. Unlike everybody else, he doesn't treat Annie as a nuisance. And let me tell you, the rest of Vanya's family and the goons...
Oh?
Hired goons.
Hired goons?
They treat her like not great, and that's what makes Igor stand out so very much. As both with the character of Annie and with the character House. Can I call House a character? Mansion? Should we call it Mansion? Whatever it is. As with both of those characters, Baker was very deliberate when he was casting Yuri. In fact, he actually wrote the character specifically for Yuri. Not only do I love Yuri's acting style, but I'm completely enamored with him as a human. He seems to just love his family so much, and he's like adorable and seems really nice and humble and wonderful. He actually released a video of the moment where he found out that he got the Oscar nomination. And he just kind of like adorably looks at the screen when he realizes what's happening. Like, oh, hey, that's me on the screen. Like, I got the nomination, while his wife is like screaming and freaking out and his kids are being adorable. It's so cute. Then when he was talking about his rise to fame on Good Morning America, he brings his whole family into the shot, which again, it doesn't seem like the hosts of the show realized that that was going to happen. And he's just ever so charming. He just seems really down to earth and proud of his family and what he's accomplished so far. When one of the hosts asks him how he feels about his many nominations, he responds saying,
how'd that feel? That's interesting. I don't know. I feel, I feel kind of hot right now.
And I know that there's a little bit of a language barrier, but there is just no more perfect response than that. Does he mean hot as in he's sexy? Because yes. Does he mean hot because he's sweaty, because he's so emotional and surrounded by his family? Probably also yes, I would say. Or is he proverbially on fire because of all of his success? That yes as well, all of the above. He is hot right now. He is so hot right now.
So hot right now.
I particularly love seeing these human moments in his real life because as I was watching the film, I couldn't actually tell if he was the best actor in the entire universe or if Sean Baker had just cast Igor instead of Yuri. Like, is Yuri the real Igor? Not that I'm saying that he's a hired goon.
Hired goon?
But, like, that's his character in real life. But seeing him in these real life moments, it completely affirmed that in actuality, he is an incredible actor because his behavior in these human moments that are happening to him in the real universe is very different than his character of Igor. At one point in the movie, Annie asks him what's going on. Why are they in her house? And asking her new husband about their marriage license. Igor thinks, looks around a little bit, but not for too long, and responds,
I have no idea.
I have no idea. Everything about this scene is perfection. His posture suggests that he is both powerful and relaxed. His body faces away from Annie, but he cranes his neck so that he can still see her. He seems truthful, confused, and dutiful to the job that he's there to complete. The fact that he answers this question honestly, even though it isn't particularly helpful, shows us that he respects Annie right out the gate. In these first few moments that he's on screen, I said out loud, he's in love with her. I was like, oh my God, he feels the feels for this girl. Now, I don't know if that's a romantic love that he feels for her, but he feels akin to her. And that is so extremely evident, even though we only get to see a very little bit of him at this point. He doesn't really do anything. He doesn't leer at her, but I could feel his emotion oozing off the screen. It was around this time that I pointed at the screen literally, and I was like, that's the best actor that I've ever seen in my entire life. I couldn't believe it. I don't know how I fell so in love with him. I know that I generally don't recognize good acting, but there is just something about him that is enchanting and wonderful and succinct and thoughtful. There's thoughtfulness. I can't get enough of it. I have to go back and watch all of his Russian movies. I'm pretty sure that this is one of his first English language films. He's been in quite a few other films. I need to go check them all out. So again, because I was like so obsessed with him so early on this film, that would usually be another point in a movie where I might be getting a little bit bored and I might start doing the Googling on my phone to find out who the heck this guy is. But again, Sean Baker struck again and he just sucked me in. So I didn't actually look up anything about Yuri until after the fact. Igor gets charged with controlling the very feisty Annie, which he tries to handle with grace.
Just see.
I fucking dare you take another fucking step,
I don't touch you. No, don't leave.
But ultimately, he does need to overpower her.
Please, stop. Stop, please.
Or try to overpower her. Even when he's grabbing her forcefully, he doesn't lose his politeness because he's seemingly a good guy, even though he's sort of assaulting her. During this struggle, he ends up subduing her by kind of like holding her on top of him. So he's kind of like got her in a bear hug and they're on top of the couch. And you can see his face peeking out from underneath her flailing body. He looks almost afraid. Like he's coming to the realization that he has gotten into a job that crosses his moral boundaries. But because he's a dutiful employee, he can't stop. I would argue that a lot of people feel like this in their professions, but more stereotypically, probably there are many exotic dancers who feel like this. He effectively is questioning, is this worth the money? He seems to feel both akin to Annie and sorrow for her.
I can't wait until Ivan sees what you did to me.
Ivan did just leave the house?
Sean Baker knew how to appropriately use Yuri as the character of Igor. During a moment where Toros is telling Annie that she's trash, basically, the focus of the camera is on Igor, who looks mournful, dejected, heartbroken, and like he feels Toros's words deeply.
You don't understand. He shamed his family by marrying somebody like you. If you think for a second this is going to be allowed, you're dead wrong.
In a movie named Anora, which is what Annie is short for, shouldn't the focus be on her reaction to Toros's insults, not on Igor's? I would argue no, because I think that this movie is actually all about Igor and not Annie. I know you think I'm wrong. But even if you think that I'm right and that this movie is all about Igor, that's not necessarily enough to change the name of the movie from Anora to Igor. So I do feel like we need to explore that question a little bit because it would have been a very different movie if it was named Igor. So we'll revisit that in a little bit. After Annie is finally subdued, Igor even reassures her.
Everything will be okay.
In contrast to these sweet and caring moments, when Toros tells him to do his job, he is all business. The other hired goon, Garnick, is bumbling, which brings many comedic moments into the film. At one point, he is chasing Vanya, and he does like a full-on banana peel slip on the pavement. And then he also, shall we say, is maybe a little overly trusting.
You staying here and getting this annulled. You heard my boss.
Which does not work out well for him. Sadly, that's not the only unfortunate thing to happen to Garnick. Although the copious amounts of vomit might be equally unfortunate for the rest of the people in the car.
Still fucking stinks in here.
Fuck, I know. Shit!
The final act of the film is where Igor really shines. This is where him and Annie develop a little bit more of a connection, and the two of them have an interaction that I definitely cannot put on YouTube, but it is adorable. It's as adorable as accusations of bad things and questioning of sexuality can be. I thought it was very cute. They're being playful. I swear I'm not crazy. And the last scenes of the film have Igor performing the ultimate act of kindness when he returns the wedding ring Vanya had given to Annie.
3 carats.
This is Zakhara's property.
The movie ends with Annie crying in Igor's arms. I think it goes without saying that I enjoyed this movie very, very much. I actually talked far less about the film and far more about Yuri Borisov than I usually would. Usually I wouldn't go off on one person so dang much. It was almost impossible for me not to in this case. The movie itself is incredible. So now I guess the ultimate question that I've been hinting to is, do I want this movie to be called Igor since I gosh darn loved him so stupid much? No, I do not want that. I don't want that much attention on him. The story is about Annie, and Igor is her support, her caring, her respect. Anora is a movie that highlights the mistreatment of women by the rich and the powerful. And Annie definitely gets mistreated in this film. Vanya's family saw her as disposable, but Igor saw her as human. We, as the audience, get to see Anora through Igor's eyes. And that is definitively the reason that the movie should be called Anora and not Igor. But I wouldn't know her if it wasn't for him. He is the ultimate supporting character. I wouldn't feel for her in the way that I do if it wasn't for him. He creates a universe where she matters, and she is relevant enough to name a movie after. And I love him. So I guess this is just my little love letter to both Anora and Igor. I know I already sort of mentioned this, but I just want to kind of hit this point again. I know I didn't dive into all of the details of this film, and that is because I absolutely think that you should give this one a watch if you haven't already. It is stunning. I would highly recommend it. It is deserving of all of the buzz that it is getting. It's heartfelt, it's funny, and it is easily a 7 out of 7 thumbs up. I loved this movie. It is one of my favorites of 2024, which is why I didn't fully spoil the ending for you. Because you should just go watch this movie right now. I think it's on the Hulu and maybe some of the other streaming services. Do it. It might even still be playing in some theaters. Do you guys love Igor as much as I do? I know that you do. You don't have to answer that. Thanks, Yuri Borisov. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. And thank you guys so much for watching. I cannot wait for the next one. I'll see y'all soon. Bye. Or is he preferred? Hey, you know what you're not allowed to play with? That stuff.